I climbed in on top of these boxes. Here I am in a suit and tie, and I'm crawling over these boxes to the back of the trailer. I lift box after box until I feel like, okay, this is the one.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. The image of you in a full suit in Florida, crawling over a bunch of boxes, always makes me smile. Matt, what's the toughest case you think you've ever worked on?
Gosh, I've worked on a lot of tough cases, but one that comes to mind right up front was a case. I can't say the name because we got to keep things attorney-client privileged, but the person had a name that you would not want to present in front of a jury because it sounds like they are a whiner.
I remember.
Just by the name. So I can't give you the name. Super nice client. Well, she was rear-ended by a semi-tractor trailer, and you would think she'd be really hurt badly, and she was, but her injuries were not the broken bone. It wasn't something that had a herniated disc. It wasn't something you'd see on an x-ray or an MRI. Rather, she had something called reflex sympathetic dystrophy. Back in the day, I think they even called it fibromyalgia. It's kind of one of those things where if you hurt all over, but the doctor can't pinpoint one thing, this is what it is. And so we knew this is going to be hard because it's hard to prove those damages. So that was the first thing. The second thing is the trucking company that was driving the semi, they were a small company out of Knoxville, Tennessee. And they weren't cooperative at all. So we reached out to their insurance company. The insurance company said, hey, we're not at fault here. We're at fault, but we're not going to pay anything on this claim. And so the hard part was we then filed a lawsuit against this trucking company. And I had to go out to Knoxville, Tennessee, because the attorney who represented that trucking company, he couldn't even get them to cooperate. So I fly out to Knoxville, Tennessee. I hire an trucking expert, and we get out to Knoxville. We go to this place. It's on about a 5-acre dirt lot. There's a number of semis parked there. There's a portable construction office, which is their office. Behind the portable construction office, there is a fifth-wheel trailer where they keep all their records in legal boxes. And they're stacked up about 5 high. The reason they didn't want to give us the information we had been asking for is because they were going to have to dig through those boxes to get it. So they said, you can come out here and you can look through all of our records. And we didn't know what we were going to be doing. We didn't know if they were going to be kept in an organized fashion or anything. We thought this would be in a building with nice file drawers, alphabetically organized. Not even close. So my expert sat at a card table inside their little portable construction office while I went out to the trailer and I would dig through boxes and bring in boxes. And we started bringing these boxes at first, one at a time. And we could realize quickly, we're only going to get through about a quarter of these boxes in the time that we have allotted. And so, Wes, this might sound crazy, but I said a prayer. I just said, I asked God to help me. And I just said, look, you know where everything is. I don't. And so I followed an impression I got. I climbed in on top of these boxes. Here I am in a suit and tie, and I'm crawling over these boxes to the back of the trailer. I lift box after box until I feel like, okay, this is the one. I pick up the box. It's about 3 deep. I lift it up. I scoot it. I try climbing back over. I'm scooting it over all the other boxes. And I climb outside, and then I lift the box down. I bring it in to my expert. His name was Matt also. And I had it to him, and after about a half hour of going through that box, he came out and said, Nugget. And he showed me a list of all of the prior employees of this trucking company with their phone numbers. So we flew back to Mesa, and what I was trying to prove, because what he was able to see was he was able to look at their logs, the truckers' logs, and find that this truck driver had been driving over hours. And so there are some documents some rules that trucks...
No.
Yeah, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. Truckers have to abide by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations. This isn't stuff that, by the way, every attorney knows. This is kind of getting more in the weeds into people that do a lot of trucking accident cases. And so we understood the law. My expert knew the law. We found this. Because these were not key employees of the company, I stayed up till horrible hours of the evening calling these former employees one by one. And there was about 100. Most of them wouldn't take my call, but I found three needles in the haystack. And I called these three employees, all told me that the owner of the company told them, if you're not going to, because they would complain about him running them over hours. And he told them, if you won't run out over hours, you're fired, and I will hire somebody else that will. Because he knew he could find employees that would. We tried to find the employee, so we had that good information. Now we needed to find the employee that was driving the truck. Well, he no longer worked for the company, and we couldn't find his information anywhere except in that document. And he lived at the bottom of Florida, at the very bottom edge of Florida. The owner, we were taking his deposition in Orlando. So we flew out to Orlando, took the owner's deposition. I drove 2.5 hours to the bottom of Florida. And wouldn't you know, on the day I drive out there, there's a semi-tractor trailer outside of a condo, and it's got its hood. So the semis, their hoods open up this way. His hood was open, and he wasn't like a plumber. I don't see his bum crack, but he's sitting out there, and he's bent over working on the truck. And I called him by his name. I'm trying to protect names here. And he turns around. He said, "Who are you?" I said, "Sir, my name is Matt Riggs. I've come all the way from Arizona just to talk with you. Can I have just 15 minutes of your time?" He said, I'm busy. I said, "I can see you're busy. Sir, please, will you just answer a few questions?" He was very put off, and he wouldn't really talk to me, but I asked him a couple of questions. I said, "Sir, this is a nice truck. Are you an owner-operator?" And he said, "I am." I said, "Do you own this semi?" He said, "I do." I said, "These things cost a lot of money. How'd you get this truck?" And he told me that the owner of the company bought it for him when he said, "You're going to have to leave our company." He bought him off.
Yeah.
I said, "Have you been told not to speak with me?" He said, I won't answer that question.
As good as yes.
Exactly. So we went back, and when I took the owner's deposition, I said, "Do you know such and such a guy?" He said, "Well, yeah, he used to work for us." And I said, "Let me tell you what he told me." And so that we went off the record. Opposing counsel went outside with me, and he said, "How much do you guys want?"
Nice.
And we were able to get the case resolved right there on the spot. So some of the things that I learned through that case, because, sometimes you want to know, all right, what are some of the takeaways from that case? One, I think that following impressions is really important. There were some impressions that I got in that case. Just following your impressions, you're going to be right if you're following those. The second is be tenacious. Don't give up. Just keep working until you get the right answers. And when the answers, just because it's not there right in front of you doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And it's going to take a lot of work. And sometimes you have to work late into the night. Sometimes you have to take some risks. And you know this, we take risks in our firm to help our clients. That was one of my tougher cases.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite stories. The image of you in a full suit in Florida, crawling over a bunch of boxes, always makes me smile.
It was very dusty. I can tell you that.
As we were talking, I was thinking about some tough cases I've gone through. And a case can be tough for a lot of different reasons. Sometimes a case is tough because the injuries the client has suffered are so severe that anytime you're digging through the medical records of that case, or you're meeting with the client or meeting with family members, it is an emotional toll. It can be hard. And I think of a case we had together, a medical malpractice case. Same problem. You can only disclose so much in these cases, but suffice it to say, she didn't have an exam done when she should have had the exam done. And had she had the exam done, and it really wasn't a hard exam to do.
Wes, is this the case where she was told that she was too large to fit in an MRI bore?
This is the one.
And yet we were able to prove that she could have fit in that MRI bore?
So that's one thing. This is what made me think of it. In these cases, especially medical malpractice cases, you have to become sort of a quasi-expert in something very specific. And if you would have told me in law school that I would spend a lot of my time one day reading over MRI machine manuals and their specifications and where they are in hospitals and which hospital has which one and who can fit in which MRI machine, I would have told you were crazy. That's not why I was going to law school. But I did that. And that's right. This client should have had an MRI. And everyone agreed she needed the MRI. But for some reason, they decided not to give her one. They thought she was too big for the MRI machine. And you're supposed to do some very specific things to determine if they're too big. Take very specific measurements on the patient. And for whatever reason, they just didn't do it. They eyeballed it. And they said, nah, she's probably too big. And they moved on. Had they given her the MRI, they would have found the problem and would have been able to fix it, and she probably wouldn't have been paralyzed. And what we found out in all the digging of that, or digging through the MRI specifications and her medical records, was that just a week prior, she had had an MRI done at a different facility. And in reading over the specifications for the MRI machines, it turns out the MRI she had a week prior, that machine was actually smaller than the one that was available at the hospital.
I remember when you found that information out.
Yeah.
So we're not against whooping and hollering in our firm. When we find some good information, we high five, we're jumping up and down. We're pretty excited. I remember that day that you found that information. We were pretty excited.
We were, yeah. Going to meet with her in her trailer out in the middle of nowhere and her family, and seeing how this injury affected her. And because she had other health issues as well, every time we would meet with her, or even every time I would talk to some of her family members, she was always getting worse, worse, and worse. And if you remember, we had this case for, I think, over 4 years. It was a long case. And she ended up passing away in the process, which gave us another myriad of legal hurdles to jump through. Thankfully, we were able to jump through them. The case changed entirely. We had spent a lot of money on experts, and I don't even know how many experts we had in that case, but it was a lot. I think I went back and counted during that lawsuit. We had to sue 18 different individuals or companies in that case. And so many aspects of it were challenging. But when that client passed away, I remember going back out to that trailer and talking to some of the family members. And they asked if I would sign our client's a frame of a picture of our client they had framed for her funeral. And several of the guests had signed it. And I remember thinking, you're part of their family when you do this. You are connected to them and you know everything about them, and that's part of it. And you're oftentimes helping them through one of the hardest, if not in this case, the hardest part of a person's life. There's a real emotional connection to these people. And ever since that case, I've had the thought of, Wes, you need to try and treat people like they are a part of your family. Sometimes that's hard to do. Every case is different. Every client's different. And making sure that you do that to the best of your ability, I think sets us apart from some of the more impersonal firms out there.
I know that I've received 2 telephone calls from her children since that case is finished, referring clients to us. They do become like family. And that's where a lot of our cases come from, is just referrals from former clients and family of former clients.
I was thinking of, in the same vein of cases that are tough or situations that are unique, I had another case against one of the big box grocery chains. And it's a lady who was in the food court area. She was getting a drink. She went to step off the rug that was underneath the soda machine there. And her first step off of it, she took a spill and just destroyed her ankle. Really bad injury, needed lots of pins and plates. She was an older woman. It was really, really a rough recovery. Anyway, so she came and I explained to her that premises cases, slip and fall cases, they're hard, especially in Arizona where we have comparative fault. juries look at these cases and they say, well, you probably should have been looking where you were stepping.
That's always something the defense brings up.
Always. And they can split liability however they want. They can say it's 90% your fault, 10% the fault of the premises, and any variation in between. And I'm explaining that to the client, and she said, look, whatever you can do, please help. Which sometimes can be a frustrating answer, because whatever you can do can mean a million different things, and you really want to try to help these people, but you know these are going to be tough situations. Well, the injury was so bad, I kept thinking, we need to do more, we need to do more. We got stonewalled from the other side in the beginning, so we filed the lawsuit. We went through a bunch of discovery. They disclosed a lot of their policies and procedures, and they said, we'll send you some surveillance footage, which of course we had asked for. And they initially sent me 5 minutes before my client fell, 5 minutes after, and of course the fall. Nothing. It gave me nothing of value. And I said, I want you to send me 2 hours before, 2 hours after. And so for 4 hours, I sat at my computer screen, clicking through, framed, and it's not great, not a great picture. It's pixelated. You can barely see everything. And I'm just staring at this screen for hours. And I went over it, went back and forth till finally, about 10 minutes before my client slipped, I noticed that someone who was getting a drink had spilled their drink on the corner of the rug, and that had gotten onto the concrete. And I thought, okay, there it is. That's where she stepped. This is how it happens. But I still have to be able to prove that the grocery store knew that was a problem.
Yeah.
Because
You have to know, they have to either know, or we have to be able to prove that they should have known.
bingo.
And so that's the key right there. No, either they knew or they should have known of the dangerous condition of the premises.
And I knew the first part I didn't have. I knew that they didn't know it was there. Because if they knew it was there, they likely would have cleaned it up. But in reading over their policies and procedures, it's outlined what they're supposed to do anytime they walk past any kind of hazard. Well, so now I'm watching the video again, but I'm looking for any employee that's close to that spill. And I happen to see an employee walk by with his dust mop 3 times, this puddle right there.
Between the time of the spill and the time that she fell.
Yes.
Wow.
And clearly could have seen it, should have seen it, didn't do anything about it. And in fact, I remember this grocery store chain, they had a policy that they were supposed to carry rags in their back pockets for the sole reason that if they saw any liquid on the floor, they would clean it up. And I wrote a nice letter outlining what I had found. I sent it off to opposing counsel, and he calls and he says, what do you think about a mediation? And we got the case done. But similar to digging through files, sometimes it takes one frame at a time, watching, waiting, and if you don't do the work, you're not going to find that file, or you're not going to find the employee who dust mops past the boat.
That's a great case.
That's fun.
Great job, Wes.
Oh, thanks.